Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Pet, and welcome to a very different video, but one I've wanted to do for a while actually. Today, we're going to talk about my love of watches. Now then, I shall be having a nice beer while we do this video. I'm in that kind of chilled out mood. I just want to talk you through my watch collection. But before we start, I want to give a massive shout out to Noble Chairs, who sent me the most fantastic Christmas gift. They sent me this wonderful chair. It is an official AMG Petronas Mercedes Formula One team chair. Absolutely stunning, stunning thing. So thank you very much, guys. You have made my office look awesome. Now then, where am I going to go with this video? So I think there's a real tie-up between people who love cars and people who love watches. It seems to be a kind of synergy between the two. And I've always really loved my watches, but never really talked about it on the channel at all until last weekend when I bought my ultimate dream watch, my unicorn watch, a watch I've wanted for many, many, many years. And I put a post on Instagram and the response I got was amazing. So I thought, well, I might just do a little video around why I love watches so much and my journey through watches, because I find it really interesting. Now, I've always liked watches, but I guess really the first step into a proper watch happened when I turned 30 years old and Mrs. Petrolped bought me this. Now, this is a Tag Heuer. It wasn't a massively expensive watch at the time. I think, well, I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about was just how incredibly expensive watches can be. At the time, bearing in mind, I was sadly 18 years ago. So 18 years ago, I think this was about a £700 watch. It's very simple, white face. It's got a rotating bezel around it, and I just liked it. It was very stylish. It's got the Tag Heuer logo in it, and I really love the watch. It was very, very simple. And I wore it for 10 years. It's a battery-powered watch, so it's not self-winding. I did have a few issues with it. Over the time I've owned it, it needed to have a new bezel, it needed to have a new face and hands. And I guess one of the things that we probably need to talk about is when you own these really nice watches, you do actually need to spend the money in keeping them serviced. It's not dissimilar to a car, really. So, when you go and have a watch battery replaced, you can just go down a cheap jeweler's and get a battery stuck in the back, but ideally you want to send it back to the manufacturer, and I've always done that. So this has always gone back to Tag and had a battery replaced, and then they reseal and pressure seal the back because this watch, I can't remember what the depth rating is. I've actually scuba dived with this watch down to about 25 meters. So it's 200 meters depth. So you want it properly sealed. And that was my first proper watch. And I've always liked Tag as a brand. One of the things I might talk about as we go through this video is the brands that I love and the brands that I'm not actually that keen on. In fact, I'll get it right out there. I'm not a big Rolex fan. I've never really kind of I had any kind of want for a Rolex. The brand I always wanted, and I think it's the aviation side of things, I've always had a massive passion for Breitling. And when I was coming up to my 40th birthday, Mrs. Petrolped and I had a chat about what I'd like for my 40th birthday, and I said I'd really like a nice watch, a really proper, nice dress watch. And amazingly, Tracy bought me my first Breitling, and I've still got all the box and everything, and this is my Breitling in here. It's a Breitling Chronomat, and I shall show you there. It's for me, what I loved about this watch is it's quite a big watch. Now I don't have massive wrists, so there's always that challenge about how big your watch is going to be and how it's going to sit on your wrist. But I love the look of this watch. It's quite big. It's I guess some people might say it's a little bit blingy and a little bit in your face, but it's not as much as I think some Breitlings, especially when you've got the kind of gold casing and so on. It's got the blue Breitling face. It's a Chronomat, so it's got the stopwatch and 3 dials, and I love this watch to bits. The other thing as well, which won't come across on camera at all, is it's a really heavy watch. When it's on your wrist, when I kind of went from wearing the tag, which actually isn't very heavy at all, to wearing the Breitling, the difference, you could feel it on your arm. It was almost like going to the gym. So that's my Breitling, and I love my Breitling to bits. Now, again, this is not a self-winding watch. This is a battery watch. So it's needed a battery. It's been serviced by Breitling every probably 2 or 3 years, and that isn't a cheap thing. So my last service on this watch was just under £500, because they not only did they do the battery, they did a few other things. It had some internals replaced. So they're not cheap things to keep. I mean, even a standard send off to Breitling and battery change is probably £200 or £300 depending on where you go. But for me, it's well worth doing. So that's my Breitling, and I love that very much. But it's not, although I love Breitling, it was never my ultimate target watch. I think this was, a £3,500 watch, so it was a lot of money. But I always had my eyes set on another particular watch. However, very briefly, I did have. Now, most of you probably know by now, I'm a trainer in telecommunications, so I love my tech and I love my gadgets. So and I'm a massive Apple fanboy. I'm a hugely bought in member of the Apple ecosystem. So when Apple bought out the Apple Watch, I clearly had to go and buy one. And I've still got it, but I haven't worn it for a long time, years. I didn't wear it for that long, really. I quite liked some of the features on it, but I never felt it had the presence on my wrist, and whenever I was wearing it, I always felt like I should really be wearing my Breitling. So, although I've had an Apple Watch, a smartwatch, and I quite like the idea of a smartwatch, for me, my challenge with the Apple Watch is it just doesn't have that visual presence on your wrist. I quite like Tag Heuer do a connected watch, and that looks more like a watch than a piece of tech. So I did have a brief flirt into the world of Apple Watches, but yeah, never really a massive fan. And that kind of brings me to what happened last weekend. So the story, and I think for me, what I love about watches is they're often very expensive purchases. So unless you're wealthy and able to just drop money on a watch, there's always some reason why you have it. You know, my first tag, my 30th birthday, my Breitling, my 40th birthday. There's always some moment in your life that sometimes you might want to recognise by the purchase of a really nice watch. And for me, the moment that I wanted to mark with the purchase of my ultimate watch was losing my parents. Now, I lost my father nearly 7 years ago now. And I lost my mum this year, Mama Petrol. Many of you will have seen her on the channel. And I was very lucky that within my kind of inheritance, I wanted to take some of that money and do something with it that wasn't just, paying off a mortgage or paying off debts or whatever it might be. I wanted something that I could really remember my parents by. And I thought it was a great opportunity to buy my ultimate watch. And my ultimate watch is a story that I wanted to share with you. So the first thing is, when you think about my brand, Petrol, and my current logo, that logo was designed by a very good friend of mine, a guy called Steve Fenton, who not only designed that, but he also designed the logo and branding for my limited company that I run all of my different businesses under, a company called Igniting the Sparks. And Steve did the branding for me for that, and it was so fantastic, and I loved it so much. When I did the rebrand for Petrol, I kind of said, look, I want to do a new rebrand, and these are all the things that mean something to me. Give me some ideas. And Steve hooked into an idea completely. It was a complete fluke, a complete coincidence. And Steve's inspiration was Steve McQueen in the film Le Mans. Now, if you've seen that film, there are so many iconic things in that film, but the main Petrol logo and the two stripes, we've even got a retro version of it, are inspired by the Gulf liveried racing overalls that Steve McQueen wore in that film. But also in that film, he wears a very special watch, a Heuer Monaco. And I have always loved the Heuer Monaco. It's such an iconic watch. It stands out so much with its square face. It's so different. When you've got one on your wrist or when you see someone wearing one, you can spot it miles away, and I've always wanted one. And for me, it's the story of the Heuer Monaco that I find really, really interesting. So the Heuer Monaco was designed by Jack Heuer in 1969, and Steve McQueen wore it in the film Le Mans in 1971. And interestingly, back in the day, it wasn't a very successful watch for Heuer, which then became Tag Heuer. It was only on their kind of books as a watch they were selling for 6 years, then they basically discontinued it. It was replaced by a watch called the Silverstone. But that square face, but it was the world's first automatic chronograph, the world's first self-winding watch. Now, Tag bought the Monaco back in 1997, but they only did it with a black face. It was until a few years later, 2003, that they bought out the blue-faced Monaco. And there are a number of different versions of the Monaco, and they range in price as well. And I'd always looked at the square-faced Monaco and thought, that's great, but I never really thought I would be able to afford the ultimate. Now, for me, the ultimate is the Heuer Monaco Calibre 11, and that is what's in this box. So let me open it up and show you the watch, because I think there are a few things I want to kind of talk to you about that make this for me, my unicorn watch, the watch I've always wanted. The first thing is the Steve McQueen link. Steve McQueen for me is one of the coolest guys ever to have walked this earth. He was amazing. I loved him in Le Mans, in The Great Escape. He's just just such a cool guy. And in the film Le Mans, he wears a Heuer Monaco. But it predates Tag Heuer. It's called a Heuer, and when they re-released it, you can get Tag Heuer Monacos, but there's this one, just this one, is the Heuer Monaco Calibre 11. So when you look on the face, it doesn't say Tag Heuer, it says Heuer. I love that. I love that nod to the vintage. The other thing that makes this watch quite special is the crown wheel is on the left-hand side of the watch. Now, for most watches, in fact, pretty much every other watch, it's on the right-hand side. And there are a number of reasons for that, about it, because it was the first automatic winding watch and so on. But I'm a left-handed person, so I always wear my watch on my right wrist. And therefore, actually, that's why the crown wheel's on that side, because if you wear it on your left wrist, you can adjust it with your right hand. This is like the world's best left-hander's watch, because the crown wheel's on the left-hand side. And then just it's a real standout for me. The two little buttons on the side, on the original Monaco that Steve McQueen wore in the film, they were round. When they re-released them, they're now square. And then on the back, the actual clasp on the back, again, just has Heuer written on it, and it's a nice blue leather strap. And it just has this, when you wear it on your wrist, it's just a real statement. And I love the history of it, and that for me is why I decided to buy one, and I had an opportunity to buy one. Now, this isn't a sponsored video or anything. I'm not sponsored. I paid this full money. I didn't get any deal from Tag or whatever. But what I did do, I bought the watch from Watches of Switzerland, and I do genuinely want to give a shout out to the guys at Watches of Switzerland on Regent Street in London. Because they made the whole handover process a very, very special one. And it was quite interesting for me, because it's a bit like when you buy a nice car and you have a handover in a car dealership and they put a cloth over the car and they pull it off and everything. For me, the handover they did was just so wonderful. They took, Tracy and myself went up into a private room upstairs, and we had a glass of champagne and a mince pie, because it's Christmas, obviously. And they brought the watch in on a tray. And it just made the whole process a very, very emotional one for me. I got really emotional when I first saw the watch, and the reason I bought it is just to remember my parents, and every time I look to check the time, I'll do that. And then I put an Instagram post, and people said, well, why don't you talk about your watches some more? So the other incredible coincidence that happened, the day I bought my Heuer Monaco, the same day, the watch that Steve McQueen wore in the film Le Mans. Now, there were 7 watches actually that were used on that film, but 6 of them were kept by the production company. One watch that was worn by Steve McQueen, he gave it to his one of his stunt drivers, and it was auctioned on the same day that I bought this, and it sold for $2.2 million. But for me, that absolutely finished the whole experience thing, because suddenly you've got this, it was just bizarre that it happened on the very same day. $2.2 million. It's not the most expensive watch that's ever sold at auction. That goes to a Patek Philippe that went for $31 million. Still a lot of money though, eh? That's it. Now, I'd love to know what your ultimate watch is. That for me is something that I've wanted and admired as a watch for many, many, many years. I never thought I'd ever be in a position to own one. And now I am, and it's a very treasured possession already, even though I've only had it a week. Where do I go from here in terms of a watch collection? I don't think I'll ever become a watch collector. I don't have the money really, but I do have. I think the next step up from that. So this is a £5,000 watch. My next step up from that, I've got watch brands that I love and admire. I love Audemars Piguet. I'd love an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, but they're £20,000 or something. I'd love Hublot watches. I think they're a really big statement on your wrist. And I love Richard Mille. But you look at those and they are, 10, 20, £30,000. And I honestly struggle to understand, I've got a 50th birthday coming up in a couple of years' time. Maybe, you never know. But I struggle to understand how you can drop that much money on a watch. But in the comments below, put in the comments below what have you got? Are you a watch fan? The fascinating thing when I put this picture up on Instagram is there were probably a good half a dozen people commented on the picture saying, yeah, I've got one of those. It's in my collection. It's a special watch. But anyway, guys, I know this is a very different video, but for me I just wanted to talk through my journey through watches from my first proper tag all the way up through to my ultimate watch and the reasons behind it, and that's the final thing I probably want to say is I think that's why I love really nice watches, is because there's often they're very often given as presents or gifts, or you buy them for a special occasion, and I think that's what puts a really special place in our hearts for our watch, for the timepiece that sits on our wrist. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. A little bit different, I know, but if you have done so, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol for plenty more content to come. And you'll see this in videos next year, and every time you do, let's think of Mama Petrol and Papa Petrol, because I know I will. I'll see you on the next film, guys. You take care. Drive safe.